Okay, next.
So do you have any idea about how much of this kind of prenatal movement is cortically controlled or controlled by brainstem or spinal cord?
Yes, I want to know, but very difficult to answer.
So has there been any accidentally infant with cerebral developmental disease in your
Yes, to some extent, yes, I think so. But so later I will introduce that. I think the premature baby might give us a very important clue to discuss about this. So next, yes, please.
What's about the anticipatory mouth opening or other gestures? How, what's the fraction of babies where this has been measured?
Fraction.
Does it happen with every single infant, or?
The discrimination between the flex.
Where it was detected and non-detected. I mean, some are anticipated, like some have this anticipatory mouth opening, some, I guess, don't have it.
I see. I think this kind of anticipatory mouth opening is not reflex because the human fetuses repeatedly show this kind of mouth opening. For example, successfully 6 times or so. This seems to be intentional behavior, I think. If their fetuses show this sucking behavior accidentally, such kind of very successive behavior cannot be observed. Of course, this is indirected evidence. Okay.
Yeah. Were there also babies who did not do this, did not open their mouth? And how many?
How many? Over 90% of fetuses show this kind of anticipatory mouth opening after 25 of gestation. Okay. So next, human fetuses learn not only their own body but also learn the external world. Maybe you know that human fetuses, at least the last trimester of pregnancy, can discriminate their mother's voice from the stranger female voice. So when hearing mother's voice, fetuses begin to increase their heart rate. But I don't know why. We don't know why. So anyway, using the ultrasound sonography, we try to observe what human fetuses are doing when perceiving the mother's voice. And our answer is human fetuses begin to open their mouth or activate their mouth during hearing mother's voice. So in this experiment, first 2 minutes were the baseline period with no sound. After that, 2 minutes, we presented one of the 2 auditory stimuli, the recorded mother's voice or a recorded female stranger's voice for 2 minutes, using the speaker put in the mother's abdomen. And next, the second baseline period for 2 minutes was studied. And as you see, only when presenting the mother's voice, fetuses begin to activate their oral movement. And this is a video showing the fetal oral response for mother's voice. So I think it is a little bit difficult to understand the fetal posture. This is arm, eyes, and mouth. Please pay attention to around here. Again, please. he or she was just 24 weeks of gestation. Like this. A very small resistance. Okay. So here, let's consider the fetal brain development. So, as you know, human brain remarkably develop, especially in the last trimester of pregnancy, from the 8 months of gestation or 9 months of gestation, at birth. In this time, the brain volume suddenly increased, and the amount of circle also remarkably increased. So the last trimester of pregnancy is quite important role for the brain, perinatal brain development. So such brain development in fetal period may be uniquely human. So we also observed the chimpanzee fetuses by using 4D ultrasound sonography, and we found Sakai et al. Found that the only human shows a remarkable enlargement of the brain in the fetal period. The brain growth velocity increased until 22 weeks of gestation, but after that, only humans continue to decrease their velocity until 35 of gestation, like this. But in contrast, chimpanzee fetuses slow down the velocity after 22 weeks of gestation. Very interesting phenomenon. So not only the outer structure of the brain, the neural system also remarkably developed within the first year of life. The previous study shows that the explosion of synapse formation starts to develop before birth and reach at the peak at the age of 2 months. Then after that, so-called synaptic pruning started and continued until the teenage years. It is plausible that the postnatal environment may strongly affect the early brain development. So from this viewing, I think it is very important to consider the development preterm infant who should grow in the mother's womb normally. Because preterm infants start to grow at NICU, neonatal intensive care unit. And this place is, in general, totally different environment from mother's womb. For example, infants grow at a very excessive noise and lighted place, and their posture motionless in an incubator, and they were isolated from mothers for a long time. And they take many routine medical procedures depending on their health condition, and such experience may be very painful and stressful. So the question is, do preterm infants already feel pain? So recent EEG study shows that preterm infants already start to discriminate the very simple tactile stimulation from the noxious stimulation. So at around 35 or 37 weeks of gestational age, the touching stimuli and the noxious stimuli launch evoke very modality-specific potentials, mainly sensory and motor areas. So furthermore, recent very long cohort study suggested that the preterm births are high risk of language development and cognitive and social emotional functioning, and the risk of developmental disorder like ADHD, LD, learning disorder, or ASD. So more importantly, not only the extremely preterm babies But the babies just born 2 weeks early are also a higher risk of the physical and mental problem than the normal full-term newborns.
Is there any associated risk of them being born slightly after than the predicted date, like 2 weeks after?
Yes.
Yeah.
2 weeks after?
After the planned date. If the 2 weeks before the planned date is already that.
Almost full-term babies.
Yeah.
Your question is the full.
My question is, you said that just 2 weeks before the full term is already detrimental, right?
Yes.
If that's the case, then is there some optimal time to develop when the child is born? If that's the case, then just delaying the birth might also be harmful as well.
Regarding
or as
this,
yes. If they are inside, is it always beneficial?
Yeah. Regarding your question, we have a not so very clear answer. So maybe the 42 weeks of gestation is very good for their health or mental development or not. We do not know much data about to answer this question. Sorry. But anyway, before 37 weeks of gestation, it have a very higher risk for their cognitive or emotional development. Although all of the premature babies have very severe difficulties in the development, but not a few individuals have very difficulties in the developmental trajectories. This is a very, how can I say that, cutting edge research finding. So, from this view, I think it is necessary to detect their risk, preterm birth risk, and support their development as early as possible. So with Professor Masako Kawai at the Kyoto University Hospital, we have tried to establish the early developmental assessment for a preterm infant with very simpler or easier methodologies. So first, we focus on the preterm spontaneous crying as a possible non-invasive tool for assessing the neurophysiological state. The participants were full-term newborns and preterm infant of the term equivalent age. And regarding the preterm infant, they have no severe brain lesions and complications. So we recorded their spontaneous cries with 30 minutes before feeding, and we conducted the acoustic analysis for their crying, focusing on the fundamental frequency and duration and 4-month frequency and so on. And also we investigated the possible effect of infant cry, like gestational age, bodily size, or intrauterine growth retardation, called IUGR. So here, please listen to the babies crying. The first is the cry by full-term newborn, just after 3 days. Next is the preterm infant cry. I hope you found some kind of difference between the two cry acoustic feature. So let's see the result. So we found that shorter gestational age is related to the higher pitch of their spontaneous cry. In addition, their higher fundamental frequency was not related to the small body size nor UGR. So that the babies who birth at very early gestation fly very higher pitch. Then I want to ask you, why such the preterm birth increase the higher pitch of spontaneous flying? My assumption is that higher fundamental frequency of flying might be caused by the lower vagal activities. The vagal nerves reflect the parasympathetic nervous system, and this is control of the visceral organ and decrease the tension on vocal fold. And actually, the previous study suggested that the preterm infant actually show lower vagal activities at term equivalent age compared to full-term newborns. So, I want to know, higher fundamental frequency actually reflect lower vagal activities in preterm infant. This is our next direction. So we investigated the relationship between the acoustic feature of spontaneous flying and their vagal activities. And to understand the level of vagal activities, we focused on the heart rate variability, HRV, especially focusing on the high frequency component. This is reflected as the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is the result. So our first finding was consistent with the previous study, showing that the power of HRV was quite lower in preterm infant compared to the full-term newborns. And also, importantly, the gestational age clearly positively correlated with their high-frequency HRV, that is the lower vagal activities. So furthermore, we investigated the relationship between the resting HRV, especially the high-frequency component, or the higher pitch of spontaneous cry. So the results support our hypothesis that we found a negative correlation between the high frequency of HRV and the higher pitch of crying. That is, the babies who can cry very higher pitch show the very lower HRV, that is very lower vagal activities. So these our findings were featured in the covered in the science paper or the international journal. So very happily, many researchers attracted our findings. So next, yes, please.
So what are the typical causes of preterm birth? Is this on the side of the baby or infant, on the side of mother, or some kind of incompatibility?
Very difficult to discriminate which is the main factor to cause preterm birth. Yes, up to now, we have no considering this factor to investigate this direction. Thank you very much. Very important point, I think. Any other question? Okay, next is the measurement of cortical brain activities of preterm infants. So we investigated the brain function of preterm infant at term equivalent age. So we compared the cortical activation towards the speech stimuli between the full-term newborns and preterm infant at term equivalent age at Kyoto University Hospital.